Reddit, what is your craziest dorm story? NSW. I actually have a few, but one stands out. In my senior year we had smaller rooms, so you had your own room with no roommate. Usually on weekend evenings the place was always empty, as most students either went home or went out, as students do. I was too broke to do neither, but the guy across my room wasn't. He was a serious boozer. This one such occasion he calls me to his room rambling incoherently about how his life was a mess. I was a bit annoyed because I was like, dude, just sleep it off, I'm the mood for a chat, especially when you are drunk and I'm sober. I then realized that he was saying last words kind of stuff like, I'm sorry, you have been a good mate. I was like, crap dude, WTF. He had a handful of Valium tablets and was planning to commit suicide. So I grab his hand just in time and we wrestle around his room for a while, with him trying to swallow the pills and me trying to take them off him and screaming for help. 20-30 minutes pass, no one turns up, and by now we are in the corridor still at it. He was quite strong for his size. I knew there was another friend down the corridor who was in his room, but he was getting late, so he probably thought we were just drunk and having a play fight. We will call him KK. I managed to drag him all the way down the corridor in front of KK's room. Kicked in KK's door, like freaking messes up the whole thing. Freaking KK comes out like he wants to kill somebody. He soon figures out what's up, and together we pinned this dude down and took all the pills he had. We went back to his room and cleared everything we could find. This dude was a nursing student and had a polypharmacy in his closet. We then left him to sleep it off. I checked up on him the next morning and he was still alive. KK and I decided to keep it to ourselves, and nothing was ever said about what happened and why. He never said anything either, and we just went on like nothing happened. That was 12 years ago. He is happily married with 2 kids now. I later found out that he had gotten someone pregnant and he panicked. He actually married that girl. So yeah, I stopped a guy from killing himself in college. Sorry for the warlord text. Wrote us on the train on my way home. Just thought I'll share. You and KK the real MVPs. I was visiting a friend at another school for the first time. He and I were planning on smoking until we walked into his dorm room and saw a girl on his bed in labor. We were both speechless until his roommate came running back from the bathroom with a wet towel and said, "Don't freak out. Don't freak out." The girl turned out to be the roommate's sister who lived nearby and was visiting. She went into labor a few weeks early, so everyone was thrown off guard. They eventually took an ambulance to the hospital, and once they were gone we saw that she was sitting on my friend's bed when her water broke. We ended up cleaning up the mess for a while, then smoked like never before in order to get the image of a total stranger screaming her lungs out of our heads. There are a lot of typical wild college dorm things, but this is the craziest. My brother's frat flooded the 2nd floor in the winter. They laid down plastic sheeting and then opened all the windows. It froze and was a badass indoor ice skating for a few days. Then the 2nd floor collapsed through the 1st floor into the basement. They lost their charter. It's a miracle nobody died. This is the reason why you always have an engineer in your frat. My roommate was this geeky 400-pound guy who watched Sailor Moon in the original Japanese. He had a tiny red-headed girlfriend who regularly beat the crap out of him in daily life, and he let her. On like 6 PM on a Thursday, he suddenly asks me if I can vacate the dorm room until 11, as they're going to have some romantic time. I was a little pee. He gave me no warning, but left anyways. Get back at midnight and walk into a scene of her in black vinyl bondage gear with a riding crop and a taxi driver's hat, riding him, with him covered in welts from head to toe. Nope, the heck right out of there. Red-headed girlfriends, man. My friend and I decided we would prank a mutual friend, and so we bought glow-in-the-dark paint. We snuck into his dorm room while he was in class and painted giant dongs all over his dorm walls and ceiling. I'm talking like 8-foot dongs that are curving onto every corner of the room, jizzing all over the ceiling. It was just a wall of big ugly fat dongs cooming everywhere. Luckily the paint dried on clear on the white walls, and when our friend went to bed that night, let's just say he definitely hated us. The paint really never came off, so him and his roommate, who hated us, had to sleep the rest of the semester gazing into the galaxy of dongs. Paint over it, other dude. Jeez. When I was in college, my freshman year, I was dormed on the same floor with the entirety of the soccer team. I was told that they throw a party on the floor every time they win a game. so lock my door on game nights. Soccer started up but they never threw a party, so I assumed our team just sucked hardcore. One night I was getting back from drinks and pool, billiards, not swimming, late into the soccer season and hear music on my floor. I guess they won. When the elevator doors opened, there was music blasting but no one in the lobby, so I assumed they were just holding it in some of their rooms or something. I went to my dorm room and grabbed some stuff to take a shower, then went to the communal unisex bathroom. When I got in there, I realized the party was in the bathroom. There was probably 30-40 people in there partying and no one was really clothed. Most wore towels around their waists and some girls were just straight up naked and drinking out of solo cups. They had huge speakers set up on the sink counter. People were hooking up in the stalls, mostly because I was already tipsy from hanging out with my friends. I decided to take a shower during their party anyways. I got past everyone and got in an empty shower stall and started washing up as quick as my wobbly self could. Before I could finish, a cute girl wearing just a towel around her waist and exposing her breast opens the curtain and sees me, and just giggles and jokes about how I'm actually showering during a party. I found out months later her name was Claire. She told me she'd wash my back and started rubbing my back, but didn't use soap and accidentally crushed her solo cup in her hand and on my back, pouring beer all over my back. While she is doing this, someone called for her and she shouted that she was showering with Kevin. I'm not Kevin or look anything like either Kevin from the soccer team. A group of 2 guys and a girl come over and when they see me, they tell her I'm not Kevin, but she's not believing them. After like 2 minutes of arguing, they just start calling me new Kevin and offer me a shot. I took a shot with them. The girl who thought I was Kevin grabbed my dong and asked if I could make it move. Then her friends pulled her away and told her for real, that's not Kevin. They got her back to her dorm room after that. During this whole time, I was almost completely silent except for telling her I'm not Kevin and accepting the shot. The people I took a shot with were all from my floor, and the guys called me new Kevin for the rest of the year when they saw me. The girl who was with the guys just gave me dirty looks when we saw each other, and Claire just avoided me in embarrassment until I switched to a nicer dorm. After like 2 minutes of arguing, they just start calling me new Kevin and offer me a shot. Bahaha, that's great. I was one of only like 3 freshmen on my floor. The rest were sophomore guys who all knew each other really well from their first year in high school and chose to live together in the dorm that year. The other 2 floors were female. One of the sophomores down the hall had his girlfriend in town for Halloween from another college, and as the night went on and people were just all over the place partying, it got pretty rowdy. At one point fairly early in the night, the room across from me got a lot of attention as it basically sounded like a porno going down. Lots of, well, you all know the dumb stuff chicks say, and obvious sex pounding on crappy dorm beds going down. Basically all of us were drunk and laughing outside the room enjoying the show, until we realized the guy from down the hall couldn't find his girlfriend. It was so crazy and sad at the same time, as the dude just sat there outside the room with tears in his eyes. They had been together since high school. To make matters worse, his friends tried to console him by saying how they know she'd hooked up with a bunch of other guys and never told him. Poor dude was crushed. On the bright side, he just sold his startup for 7 figures, so there's that. First story, we turned the bathroom into a sauna slip and slide room. We plugged the shower drains and blocked the part with the toilets with sandbags because we didn't want the water getting over there and getting toilety. We then turned the showers on and flooded the bathroom and partied. Eventually our RA walked in, looked at what we were doing, and promptly left since if he saw it he would have had to stop it. Second story, someone played a prank on our dorm by releasing a duck on our floor. The 3rd floor. The campus police were called so they took the duck away. I forget who did it, but when questioned as to how they said, I walked up to the duck, put it in a box, and walked away with it. My freshman year I worked in addition to being in school. It was a Saturday night and I was scheduled to work very early the next morning, so I figured I'd shower that night so I could sleep a little bit later. I go into the showers on my floor, turn on the light, pull back the curtain, and I see every single guy on my floor standing together in the same shower stall. All of them completely clothed and standing in complete silence. Each of them had a red plastic cup filled with ping pong balls. As soon as they saw me, each of them screamed and ran like bloody heck out of there. I never knew what the frick that was about. They probably almost got caught drinking and playing drinking games by the RA, so they decided to hide in the shower with the evidence. In the late 70s early 80s, Illinois State built a brand new dorm building where the rooms all had 2 closets, one on each side wall, but because they built the dorm on the cheap, the backs of the closets didn't have real walls, only thin pieces of pressboard. That was all that was separated one dorm room from the next. Once students figured this out, they cut big holes in the pressboard so that you could get to the adjoining dorm room by opening the closet door and scooting through the hole in the back wall. They did this in room after room, until they had effectively built a huge secret passageway connecting every single dorm room on the floor. The creation of the secret passageway led, almost immediately, to a culture of endless, enormous, authority-proof dorm parties. As soon as anybody knocked on the door or the party room, everybody could bail through the closets and be 7 doors down the hall by the time the RA or campus security were let in. Or they would keep all the alcohol and whatnot in one room and have all the people in the next. So even when the RAS knew there was a ginormous party happening, they couldn't do jack crap about it. It was total non-stop chaos. Some of the bigger hooligans would commit all manner of mischief on campus, and then hightail to this dorm building, knowing that once they were safely inside any room, there was no way the cops could ever find them. Every summer, the school would replace the ripped out pressboard with sturdier and sturdier material, but students just got stronger saws, and kept rebuilding the secret passageways, year after year. Eventually, only a few years after they built it, the school gave up and tore the building down. This is amazing. I just realized, considering the fact that my roommate was a freaking coke dealer, very lit crazy stuff actually happened in my dorm room. Couple homeless people, couple very drunk people, but nothing too out there. It's funny the massive variety of people that do coke though. People you'd never think did drugs. That's because usually only the very stereotypical people do it out in the open or don't really care if people know they do it. I was asleep in my dorm with my girlfriend. My roommate and his boyfriend were also sleeping. I have a direct line of sight to our kitchen if the door is open, and on this fateful night it was cracked open just a tad. I was pretty sure my sweet mate, guy who lived in dorm but not same room, was already home, so when the door opened I immediately woke up. I peer through the crack in the door and see a dark figure whip past the door. I roll out of bed and slip out my door and see that my closet, which is in the kitchen, frickin' dorm layout, man, is open and I can hear someone rummaging in my closet. I look at my table and all of our glasses are upside down. What? I round the kitchen to see a small Indian woman stretching out one of my aux cables on the top shelf of my closet very carefully. Can I help you? Oh no, sorry, I'm just heading to bed. She moves to go into my bedroom with my GF and roomie and his BF. I dart in front of her and politely ask what the frick she is doing here, to which she replies that she doesn't know who I am. I don't know WHO, you are mysterious auxiliary cable arranging cup flipping Indian woman. My GF wakes up when I raise my voice as the mystery girl tries to push her way into my bedroom and peeks her head out to this very odd scene. The girl explains that she is Freela and is looking for Chris. There is no Chris here, so she proceeds to be more freaked out. Suddenly out of the blue she freezes and whispers, "Sorry," and darts out of the room. TLDR. A mysterious Indian woman broke into my dorm and arranged my cables in my closet and flipped over our cups before fleeing. A friend of mine tells a story about his freshman year in a dorm with a roommate. The roommate was heading off to class, and my friend was ready to enjoy some quality alone time with some specialist gentleman's literature. For some reason, he decided this session was going to occur completely nude. Having disrobed, sat at his desk, firing up the internet. There was the rustling of keys in the door. For some reason, the roommate was coming back into the room. Thinking unfathomably quickly, he grabbed the open can of Dr. Pepper on the desk and poured it all over his body. As the door opened he said, "God damn it, I spilled this Dr. Pepper all over myself." Mental reflexes of cat. Our dorm was all singles and the doors directly opposed each other in the hallway and opened into the rooms. We lived on the 5th floor of our building. I was playing Super Smash in my friend's room with the door open when we heard some floor mates laughing in the hallway. They'd taken an entire roll of duct tape and constructed a duct tape rope between one of their doors and their friend's, who at the time was studying in his room unaware of his impending predicament. The guys pounded on his door and let Dan know he was trapped in his room and they weren't gonna let him out. Dan ran to the door and pulled as hard as he could, but the duct tape held strong. He tried and tried, before giving up and declaring that he'd find a way out. 20 minutes later, Dan knocked on his door and told his friends to go to the bathroom down the hall and look out the window. We followed along with his friends and we all peered out the window towards where Dan's window was, curious to see what he thought he was gonna do. Well, we saw his window open and a thin rope thrown out and lowered toward the courtyard, about 40 feet below. By the time we realized it was a 30-foot long Ethernet cord, not a rope, Dan was already out of the window, dangling 40 feet above the courtyard. Bear in mind, this was the middle of winter. It was probably 30 degrees outside. As he tried to rappel down the wall, our happened to walk in the bathroom to see what all the commotion was. Needless to say, he almost had a heart attack when he saw Dan dangling from an Ethernet cord. Somehow, someway, Dan managed to make it to the bottom of the cord, but was still 15 feet above the concrete. He dropped and rolled, and we all cheered as he ran to the door to come back inside. When he got back up and back into his room, he showed us how he'd done it. The crazy son of a bee had tied his Ethernet cord to his radiator that was next to his window and thought it'd be a great idea to use it as an anchor to rappel 40 feet down the building. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, let alone just a dorm. TLDR. Guy on my floor rappelled 40 feet from his window into the dorm courtyard on an Ethernet cord tied to a radiator in the middle of winter. These days he would have to rappel down with Wi-Fi. Had a guy light one of the rooms on my floor on fire. He never got charged for it, but we knew it was him because googling his name led to an article about him lighting wildfires in his home state. Then he wrote a fake death threat to himself to gain sympathy and distract everyone from the whole fire thing. He was moved to a different dorm. Then he stabbed himself with scissors on campus and claimed to have been attacked. Campus police saw through his balls this time. He was expelled and threatened with arrest should he ever set foot on campus again. A year later I googled his name and he had killed himself. Crap got real quick. My buddy and his black roommate were fricking around and broke a window in their dorm. His roommate said I can fix it, and wrote N on a piece of paper, tied the paper to a rock, and put it in his room. They then called the RA and explained that some racist had thrown a rock through the window. There were several diversity seminars later that semester and the next. That's actually impressive thinking. Hey my man, can you run down to D's room and pick up some acid for me? My cousin's in town this weekend and we wanna trip balls, but D won't sell to me. He is paranoid or something. I said yes. He was wearing a wire. Frick man, that's some 22 Jump Street crap. Not me, but my friends from an ROTC camp had some pretty good fricked up ones. My friends, total of 4, went to an ROTC junior military program camp for a month. They all had to stay in dorms for the duration as well. Friend D informs the group that he left his medication at home and then assured everyone that he didn't need it anyway. Fast forward to the night that they arrived. Friends A, B, and C wake up to the sound of squeaking, like the sound of something rubbing against a screen. They all start turning around in their beds until they see the unholy image of the moonlight shining through the window and illuminating friend D bare butt naked rubbing his balls across the TV while squealing like a pig. A few days later, friend D takes a crap in the shower when he thinks everyone is gone, also squealing like a pig. That same evening, friend B takes a break from cleaning the mess hall to go to the bathroom. Friend B takes a stall and starts to do his business when he hears the door open. Friend B looks at the bottom of the stall and recognizes the shoes that belong to friend D. Friend D then starts to pound on the stall. Friend B gets into a shouting match with lines along the line of "What part of occupied and farting don't you understand?" Friend D runs out the restroom, grabs a butter knife from the mess hall, runs back to the restroom, and then proceeds to use it to break the lock open on the stall that friend B was in. Friend D then kicks the stall door so hard that he breaks the door off of its hinges. He looks at friend B and says, "Oh, I didn't know you were in here, and then proceeds to take a dump in the sink. Give that kid his frickin' meds. 2 stand out. Circa 2000-2001. My floor was mostly other business and technology majors. The maths and social sciences were above us. And the top floor was all from the law enforcement school. We would hear rumblings and thumps at night, but from 2 floors down, and the majority of us being hammered drunk most weekends, we didn't differentiate that something was amiss. Turns out the law enforcement students were hosting their very own full-blown version of Fight Club, smashing the crap out of each other on Friday nights, and usually cleaning up the evidence the next morning. Well, one day they didn't get to it in time, and the school dean came through to find blood scattered across the walls and floors, ripped off clothes and garbage everywhere. Females were totally in on it too. After that was the other incident. In the second semester we noticed one guy was becoming quite reclusive, went to most classes and meals, but didn't socialize, and we realized we didn't see him around the laundry rooms either. After a while we started to notice an odor in the hallway. Within the week entering our section was like having a stink bomb kick you in the face. It was nasty. We sniff tested, and sure enough, the stench was emanating from this guy's room. Now, we had washrooms in our units. It was a pretty sweet dorm. By the next day, it was too much, and we had to call the RA to file a smell complaint. With an official complaint in hand, the dorm manager was allowed to enter the room to find the most disgusting hoard of filth and garbage ever seen. The Hoarders TV show couldn't even beat this place. This guy had never thrown out anything. Gatorade bottles were stacked to the ceiling. It had not been cleaned in 7 months. The toilet was overflowing. Raw sewage was all over the floor and tub of the bathroom. It was straight up lunch losing crap. We figure because the winter was so cold that the sub-zero temps kept the smell from being overwhelming for an extended time. Once the weather warmed you a bit to above freezing, it became intolerable quickly. A cleanup order was given, and within 2 days the place was made livable again and regular inspections mandated. Needless to say, the kid didn't pass the semester or return the next school year. I was worried for a second that he was dead in there, and no one went to check on him. One time, during a snowstorm, a girl in my dorm lost her bet and had to run a lap around the outside of the dorm in a bikini. It had already snowed 4-5 inches and it was still snowing. Another time, I was in my dorm and my roommate was home for the weekend. Around 4:30 or 5 am, I was still awake. I heard a scratching, squeaking sound on my door. I got up and opened the door, and there was a girl standing there leaning on the door frame. I said, "Up, can I help you?" She smiled and then ran down the hall. I just shrugged and went to bed. The next day I found out the peepholes, which were apparently very easy to unscrew from the outside, from all the doors on my floor were stolen, except mine. TLDR. I caught a girl trying to steal my peephole once. Everyone knows that if a girl tries to steal your peephole but you catch her, she's obligated to have anal sex with you. This is known as the people's peephole poophole loophole. One night a guy in my dorm announced his GF was giving BJs to anyone who wanted it. Guys were lined up outside the door, would come in one at a time, and she gave each one a BJ. My flatmate invited everyone to see a really big poop he took, claiming it was freaking huge, man. We all saw it and it was definitely as advertised. 7/10 overall because the poop smell. TLDR. Our floor had an ecstasy-fueled orgy. Roommate and I watched the tape of it. Story. It was my freshman year. I was missing home and my dorm was full of party stoners, so I usually went home every weekend. One Sunday night I get back and my key has barely turned the lock in the door when my roommate and his girlfriend are in my face. You'll never believe what just happened over the weekend here. Everyone got high on E and had an orgy. Well, you're right. I don't believe you. We thought you'd say that Roomy's GF beams, so that's why we got a copy of the tape. Roomy's GF's 13-year-old niece was visiting her, so we sent her out into the hallway with a ball and some ice cream or something, locked the door, and watched the orgy tape. Everyone was hanging out in a room. They'd all taken E and you could see it start to kick in as people started to get touchy-feely. There was a guy filming everything, and a guy on top of the bunk bed strumming a guitar. The touchy-feely escalates and so, cliff notes. There was a guy pile in the middle of 3-4 guys who were all over each other. About halfway into the orgy the cameraman switched out with one of the guys in the pile. Afterwards none of the guys in the pile would admit to their involvement in the orgy, despite the video evidence. There was a girl on the outer edge of the guy pile desperately trying to get in. None of the guys seemed to care about her. Our 16-year-old Chinese prodigy was behind that girl humping the crap out of her, but I'm not sure if she noticed. There was a guy sitting on the floor against the bottom bunk, and the only thing he got to do was to rub this girl's shoulder. This was an inside joke for a while. How do you find yourself in the middle of an orgy and the best you can do is rub a girl's shoulder? On our floor we had a classic on again off again couple. They fought about a lot of things, cheating being a prime subject. The guy was having sex with a girl on the bottom bunk, while the girl was having sex with two guys in the corner of the room. They did not break up after this orgy. They eventually did break up later, because of cheating. There was a guy on the top bunk providing guitar music for the orgy. Then a girl climbed up there with him and the music stopped. While we were watching the tape the 13-year-old niece would get bored and knock on the door, so we'd have to stop the tape, give her more ice cream, kick her back out into the hallway so we could finish watching. It was a crazy year overall, but that's the incident that stands out. I think you witnessed the birth of Dorm Room P. Literally the first weekend I was on campus, I was coming home from a party and I saw a whole mess of people from my floor sitting outside my room. I was kind of surprised why they were all sitting outside of my room. Not that I thought anything was wrong with that. Just, what gives? I ask as much and get only mumbled responses and half replies. Finally I say something along the lines of, well, have a good night I guess. Then someone pipes up and says, dude, you don't want to go in there. I've got a bit of a buzz on and in a kind of dickish way I say something like, whatever you mute him. I open the door and much to my surprise I see my roommate, who I've known for about 6 hours at that point, absolutely railing some girl on his bunk. Slightly to right I see two other people going at it on our sofa. In sum, a bunch of people I barely or don't know whatsoever banging in my room. What makes it a crazy story though is that there's one more person in the room. Another random girl, fully clothed with all of this going on around here, just absent-mindedly clicking through Facebook. She and I make eye contact for a moment and she just looks defeated. I slowly close the door, turn around and join the rest of the folks sitting in the hall. TLDR. First weekend at college and my roommate is having group sex in our room. Uninvolved, uninterested looking girl browsing Facebook like it's no big deal. Should have asked her to frick. A couple of years ago during winter, I was in my room playing video games and whatever. Then my next door neighbor knocks on my door in his underwear, telling me that he needs my help. I was a bit weirded out, but whatever. So it turns out that he had taken 3 hits of LSD and was having a pretty crappy trip. His friend who lived on the same floor as us turned up and we both decided to look after him and make sure he didn't do anything stupid. He ended up doing something stupid anyway. He grabbed his wallet and started running around the campus at full speed. The guy's friend was high as frick and I'm chronically lazy and have asthma, so we couldn't catch up. The last I saw of him that night was when he ran off into the woods at the edge of campus. A friend of mine ended up calling the porters and found out that he had ran onto the main road and jumped into an oncoming car, shattering the windshield. I'd assumed he'd be arrested or at the very least spending a few days at the hospital after that. The next day, I woke up and went to get breakfast. As I left the room, the dude was coming back to his room wearing a hospital gown, like barely anything had happened. He then accused me of stealing his wallet. Just for the record, LSD doesn't make you do things like that. Being highly mentally unbalanced and then taking LSD is what makes you do things like that. We duct taped 2 tubes together to make a beer bong long enough to reach 2 stories. We walked downstairs to the room below us and asked if we could bong a beer out our window into fires. After doing that we forgot to put the screen back onto our window and came back later that night drunk. Sat down to hear a freaking bat chilling on our futon next to us. We grabbed a tennis racket and chased it outside. Worst part was he crap on my bed. Sometimes I wish we would have kept it. TLDR. Big beer bong equals bat crap bed. Probably shouldn't be reading these as I'm at my new student orientation and sleeping in a dorm for the first time tonight. Oh well. Judging from your user, you're either going to be a raging alcoholic or be a straighter edge than a knife. There was a pot farm in the ceiling between the floors of the dorm I was in back in sophomore year. I lived in the geek dorm of the school, but it was better known for being the party dorm. Drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever all the time, and finding a goddamned pot farm in the ceiling wasn't that out of the ordinary. I knew a guy who grew weed in the closet of his dorm room. Needless to say, it didn't work out very well for him. My roommate spent the night at a girl's place to hook up. He was too drunk, passed out naked in her bed, and pee himself. Classic. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.